Day, the sun is shining brightly, illuminating the skyscrapers. The building of the headquarters of the corporation Leu Wenhua. Employees greet the director with shouts of greeting. A man with dark hair raises his hand in response to the greeting. His face does not express any emotions. Someone asks the man, and is that legendary director you? When asked, they say that yes, this is a ray of light in their company. This is the director of the anime department, Wu Yu. The man walks past the staff, giving them a cold look and closes the door behind him. They look after him with joy. A male employee says that the director is so charismatic. Another employee says that the director is handsome. But cold, what an endurance. Some girl expresses her dream of becoming the director's girlfriend, to which the guy tells her that she is new. The director is a well-known villain in their company. Another of the staff notices that the director is the scariest person in the company. Even the CEO has to make concessions to him. In addition, Director Wu is ruthless to his subordinates. Wu sits down on the sofa and, taking off his jacket, loosens his tie. He presses a button under the surface of the table, then snaps his fingers. A cabinet opens with a lot of video games standing in a row. There are figurines of anime heroes on the shelves. There are 3 computers on the table, on which the monitor also hangs. Director Wu is sitting on the couch, with a joystick in his hands. He stretches and talks with a smile about how hard it is for him to work. There are joysticks and video games on the shelves around. With a smile, he takes the joystick in both hands and says that today is the day when he will complete the 1000th test to clear the maze and kill the Great Demon King. A video game turns on the central monitor. After a while, Wu rubs the back of his head in surprise, looking at the screen in front of him. He is surprised that the game has an add-on. An offer to receive the Fall of the Demon Lord supplement is displayed on the monitor. Wu exclaims that go ahead, get to work. At the same time, outside the door, 2 female employees are discussing Director Yu. One tells the other that it is unknown what Director Wu does all day in his office. It's not even possible to see him, it upsets the girls. The other replies to her that how she is pining for Director Yu. He is the god of the wealth of their corporation. Manages a huge number of large projects. It is unlikely that the director will have time for a girl. In addition, all the witches from their company, who do not look away from him, are ready to run to him instantly, so you should not even dream about him. A monstrous explosion. Someone shouts at you. It's the employees standing in the doorway of the burnt-out room, terrified. Someone is screaming, someone is crying. A man on his knees screams, asking why Wu Yu left them. The company will not be able to exist without him in any way. Some girl asks the male chairman to be careful. Photo of Wu Yu in white colors. The inscriptions: we remember, we love, we grieve, and rest in peace. Wu Yu thinks that he is really dead. But why is his consciousness still alive? A blue streak of light cuts through the darkness. It expands and the skeleton's body is visible, clutching a sword in one hand and a shield in the other. Wu Yu sees that it is his body. He doesn't understand what's going on. He is a skeleton who wakes up at the wall. Skeletal warriors are also standing around. Wu Yu doesn't understand where he is. Maybe he's sleeping or he's in a dungeon. Here, Wu Yu's attention is attracted by a crystal in which Wu Yu sees his reflection. He is a skeleton in armor and helmet. He is shocked by what he saw. Wu Yu screams in horror, "What the hell is this?" Then, he begins to remember what happened before. An offer to receive the Fall of the Demon Lord supplement appeared on the monitor in front of him. He agreed. Then, a monstrous explosion. Wu Yu realizes that he is really not in his body. What kind of world he got into then? Wu Yu starts banging his head against the crystal, and for each hit his health decreases by 1 unit. Wu Yu says that if this is a dream, then he wants to wake up as soon as possible. He also has an 8-figure deposit in the bank, which he has been saving up all his life. Why can't he just enjoy it? Well, even if he got into another world, it would be possible to leave him a human form. He sees a notification that he is a skeleton soldier of the 1st level. His health is 10 units, mana is 10 units, magic is 10 units, strength is 10 units, defense is 10 units, dexterity is 10 units. The weapon is a worn iron sword. An auxiliary weapon is an unusable round shield. Wu Yu sees his stats and inventory and thinks it would be better if he died. There is a sound nearby. Wu Yu turns around at some rustling. There is a wave of the weapon. Wu Yu only has time to be surprised as his head flies away from his body and lands a few meters away. A warrior stands near Wu Yu's body, lowering his sword. When Wu Yu is defeated, the warrior calls other players, saying that we should go here since the monsters here are weak. For Wu Yu, the game is over. Other players can easily chop up skeleton soldiers. Wu Yu reflects on the fact that right now he realized that he needs to live for today, because it is unknown what misfortunes tomorrow will have in store. Some kind of room where blue energy is knocked up from the pedestal in the middle. Wu Yu comes to his senses and realizes that he has just been hacked by people. Wu Yu watches as other skeleton soldiers come out of the portal and realizes that this place looks like a fantasy maze, the Devil's Lair. He was playing this game. Really, Wu Yu is now a little monster that can be resurrected again and again. Really, he really got into the world of the game. Wu Yu sees two female characters run into the room, played by real people. One of them shouts to the other to hurry up, as the maze is simple. Wu Yu notices that more people have come. He must first find a place to hide and find out what is going on. Otherwise, he will be cut down immediately. Wu Yu crawls so as not to make a noise, thinking that the past generations of his family lived with dignity and he now looks so pathetic. Why would he do that? Suddenly, a spear flies into Yu's clothes from behind. He turns around in shock. A girl approaches him and leaning her foot on his body pulls out her spear. She stands with one foot pinning Wu Yu to the ground and tells her friend to go to the net faster and not worry. These skeleton soldiers are very weak. She will get used to killing several of them at a time. Wu Yu realizes with tears in his eyes that he has been overtaken by live players again. A girl with a scream, raising her sword, runs in fright towards her friend and Wu Yu. She stumbles and falls, dropping her sword. A friend looks at her with a skeptical look. Wu Yu laughs. The girl who pinned him to the ground sees this and menacingly asks who Wu Yu is laughing at. He begins to tremble with fear. A wave of the weapon and Wu Yu is dead again. He thinks why he needs all this and asks his mother to take him home. Wu Yu runs, spears and arrows fly at him. A crowd of players runs after him, shouting at him to stop and that he will not be able to escape from them. Wu Yu yells at them to leave him alone, stop chasing him. He's just been resurrected. He's in pain all over. Wu Yu shouts this to his pursuers, but low-level monsters can't talk to people, so they only hear an incomprehensible sound. The girl sees this and is surprised that this skeleton is talking. He's not happy. Juan seems to be talking to them. This skeleton is clearly different from the other monsters. Suddenly, a crowd of skeleton warriors in armor and on horseback rushes to the place of Wu Yu's escape. One of the players shouts that these are high-level sentinel monsters. They need to run. Wu Yu freezes when cavalry rushes past him. Wu Yu watches as the cavalry fights with the players. He is glad that they will finally help him. Then Yu's eyes light up with determination. He says that the players do not spare even small monsters. Wu Yu raises his sword, and with a shout that it's his turn, he will take revenge, hits one of the players. Then, he hits another player on the head with a shield. The third player is cut in half with a single blow by Wu Yu. Wu Yu stands clutching a weapon over the two female players who attacked him earlier. His eyes are burning with determination. They ask not to kill them. They will give whatever he says or do whatever he wants. Wu Yu thinks about the request, and the blonde decides to take a chance. She grabs the sword and throws herself at Wu Yu. With a blow, the girl cuts off a piece of Yu's clothes. He is amazed and asks about what she is doing. He rushes at the girl and shouts that she is a vile snake. If she attacks him surreptitiously, he will hit back. Wu Yu bumps into the girl, squeezing his hands on her throat. The weapon flies out of the blonde's hands. Wu Yu knocks the girl to the floor and raises a sword over her. She begs to let go and not touch her. Wu Yu ignores her request and eliminates the player. From all this, his level rises to 2. Wu Yu understands that he is, of course, alive, but he does not have any abilities. Then a sound attracts his attention. He turns around and sees that a skeleton warrior on a horse is standing next to him. He raises his sword over Wu Yu, intending to attack. He raises his hands in horror and asks what they want to do with him. Something the plot is not going according to the script. Aren't they allies among themselves? What is happening is shown through the eyes of a skeleton warrior, who sees Wu Yu asking him to talk and says that they are at the same time. He can't identify the creature, and since the creature could not be identified, the attacker is subject to destruction. He rushes to attack, but Wu Yu dodges, and the blow falls by. He only has time to rejoice at the fact that he dodged, as another blow blows his head off. Wu Yu puts his head back in place and asks what's going on. He thinks he is being attacked because he has been reborn. He just came to life, and everyone constantly wants to kill him. Wu Yu picks up a sword and shield, ready to fight, since he is not a weakling. The blow of the skeleton warrior falls on the shield, but Wu Yu repels the attack and the rider sweeps past. He got the skill block with a shield and is very happy about it. The rider stops the horse and turns around. Wu Yu repeats the first rule of fighting monsters. The boss raises his sword before attacking. The skeleton warrior rushes at Wu Yu, raising his sword to strike. He makes a swing, intending to hit Wu Yu, and he realizes that this is his chance. He rushes forward swiftly, slipping under the blow of the sword. Wu Yu will repeat the second rule of fighting monsters. After the block, you need to finish off the monster with a shield. Wu Yu destroys the rider with one blow, punching his head. Wu Yu stands and looks at the opponent's body, not understanding what is happening. He decides that the game is stuck and hopes that a patch will be released so that this does not happen again. A skeletal hand scrapes on the ground. A skeleton warrior with a hole in his skull and one eye stands up and takes a sword in his hand. He rushes to attack Wu Yu. He is terrified and shouts that this is the end. He sees a skeleton warrior jumping and raising his sword to strike. Then Wu Yu notices the helmet, picks it up and decides to take a chance. He puts a helmet on his head just as the skeleton warrior attacks him. The sword strike falls on the helmet and does not damage Wu Yu's head. He crawls away from the opponent and asks him not to approach. The same one raises his sword to strike. The horse takes off and runs, running through the skeleton warrior, causing him to fly apart. Wu Yu looks at it in shock, but when the horse comes up to him and rubs against his head, Wu Yu doesn't understand what happened at the beginning, and then it dawns on him that this is a property of the helmet. An information board about his characteristics and inventory appears in front of Wu Yu. The helmet on it is the helmet of the skeleton lord, can control unintelligent creatures of low levels. Wu Yu also notices that his stats have improved. He realizes that it turns out he can gain experience for killing creatures from the maze. Wu Yu realizes that he has one now thanks to the helmet, and that he seems to have found a treasure. Wu Yu squeezes the horse's muzzle, saying that this is his wealth. Wu Yu notices that this charming magical world is so interesting. He thinks that now is the beginning of his path to becoming a demon king through the transmigration of souls and transformation into a skeleton monster. Wu Yu is in the world of a magical maze in the undead kingdom of the abyss. He stands on the edge of the cliff, under which the forest stretches, and shouts that he will become the king of demons. Wu Yu sits astride a skeleton horse and points into the void with a sword. At the same time, somewhere in the ghostly forest of the undead kingdom, the abyss, a little boy stands in the middle of a forest clearing. The eyes of some creatures look at him from the darkness. The boy is dressed in armor, and he has a sword in his hands. He shivers and says he's scared. The boy's name is Uni. The creatures realize that there is an outsider in the forest and attack. A green monster is sitting in the middle of a stone plain. The remains of skeletal soldiers' armor are lying around. The monster is chewing something. Suddenly someone says an outsider. The monster turns around at the sound. A crowd of skeletal soldiers rushes at him, which attacks the monster, leaving no chance for that. A skeleton warrior appears on horseback. He blows off the monster's head with one blow, rushing past. Wu Yu gets the 5th level. He laughs and rejoices that he has reached the 5th level so quickly. Wu Yu notes that the effect of the helmet is not bad. You can control monsters without intelligence or a level below it. Also, the maximum number of them increases. Wu Yu gets on his horse and enthusiastically says that he will capture the forest. And then he laughs. Then a sound attracts his attention. He asks what it is. A boy in armor, crying and clutching a sword in his hands, tosses from side to side. He is surrounded by monsters looking at him from the bushes. Wu Yu is surprised that a human child is doing here and that he is in danger. The boy shouts the monsters away. He waves his sword around and cries. The monsters came close to him. Wu Yu, full of determination, raises his sword to attack while sitting astride. He easily cuts monsters into pieces. The boy stands in shock, not understanding what happened. It was as if a hurricane had swept through the ground around him. In the resulting pit, Wu Yu kills the last monster. Wu Yu turns to the boy and asks if he's okay. When he sees the skeleton, he screams in horror. He falls, pressing his back against the stone, and asks Wu Yu not to approach him, clutching his sword in front of him. He's shaking. Wu Yu turns to the boy and asks if he's okay. When he sees the skeleton, he screams in horror. He falls, pressing his back against the stone, and asks Wu Yu not to approach him, clutching his sword in front of him. He's shaking. Wu Yu covers his face with his hands, realizing that the boy is scared. He had completely forgotten what he looked like. Wu Yu tries to explain with gestures to the boy that he wants to help. The same one hears some croaking. The boy lowers his sword, asking if Wu Yu is lying. He rejoices that the boy understands what he is saying. Finally, he met someone with whom he can communicate normally. Wu Yu is very happy about this event. Wu Yu asks the boy what his name is and why he walks here alone. The boy replies that his name is Uni. Dad said he was testing him, so he brought him here and left. Wu Yu is outraged and says what a disgusting father Uni has. He is not worried about the safety of the child and wants him to die. Uni replies that he does not know the answer to this question. He wants to go home. Wu Yu says he can't leave the child alone in this hell, but he has just started a wonderful life, and does he need this cargo? The boy looks at Wu Yu and a light comes on in his eyes. He shields himself from the light and says that Uni can go with him, then he will take him home. Uni readily gets up and agrees to go. Wu Yu finds this very endearing. Wu Yu calls his horse Zio by. The horse looks at Juni. The horse is terrified and thinks that he will die, and Wu Yu will be a hero. Xiao Bai runs away. Wu Yu shouts after him where he is. He doesn't understand why the horse suddenly went crazy. The hero's breath has a deterrent on low-level monsters. After some time, Wu Yu had a legion of skeletons. He rides along the road on a horse. The legion obediently follows him. They sing a song by his order, marching in formation. Wu Yu leads this procession. The boy walks among the skeletons and looks at Wu Yu's back, wondering if he really will take him home. He can't be a liar specializing in kidnapping and child trafficking, as Dad used to say. Then Wu Yu stops, and the boy begins to think that this is his end, and he wants to do something with him. Wu Yu rushes to the sign ahead. The Tower of the Dead can be repaired by adventurers. Wu Yu begins to study the pointer, then his attention is attracted by something behind him. Junie clings to one of the skeletons. He cries, shivers, and thinks that he is about to die. Wu Yu rushes back, saying that they went in the wrong direction and came all this way in vain. Wu Yu understands that when he got to this small town, he could have learned a lot of news. He must first understand what kind of world it is, how to fight monsters and improve. Wu Yu tells Uni that there may be monsters further down the road. Since they were punished, weak demons can be fought, but if Uni encounters strong ones, he immediately has to hide behind him. Junie nods, understanding what he has to do. So for a while the team kept moving. Wu Yu stops, giving the same order to everyone behind him. Wu Yu rejoices at what is in front of him and what he has found. After killing such a big guy, you can get a lot of experience, and he sleeps. Wu Yu can't miss such a great opportunity. Wu Yu gives orders to Gu Sheng, Tidan, Sha Zu to retreat and surround the skeleton dragon. They readily accept the given order. They surround the sleeping skeleton dragon hiding behind rocks. Wu Yu is watching them from hiding. The dragon opens his eyes, waking up. He lets out a roar. His heart is filled with purple energy. From this roar, the skeletons try to stay in place, as they are blown away by the wind. Wu Yu is shocked by how the dragon woke up. The dragon continues to growl, emitting bone spikes illuminated with purple energy at the opponents. The skeletons surrounding him are blown away from the attack and hit with spikes. Wu Yu hides behind a stone when bone spikes glowing with purple energy fly into the stone. His warriors continue to die, pierced by thorns. Wu Yu also stands still while spikes fly around him. One of the spikes flies at Uni. Wu Yu notices it and shouts to the boy carefully. The same one, sitting behind a stone, flies in horror at a thorn flying into it. One of the spikes flies at Uni. Uni turns away, covering his head with his hands. Wu Yu screams in horror. The spike slams hard into the ground behind the boy, who is squatting with his hands pressed to his head. Clods of earth are flying in all directions. Wu Yu says that thank God Uni is safe, because if he had suffered, there would have been problems. Wu Yu looks at the thorn stuck in the ground. Uni says with tears in his eyes that he is scared. Then, he runs to Wu Yu. The same one runs to meet him, saying that he will come now, and Uni should hide and not run around here. Suddenly, Uni freezes, fearfully pressing his hands to his head. The thorn is flying towards him again. He is terrified. He falls to the ground, closing his eyes. The spike cuts into the place where he was standing a second ago. Wu Yu looks at all this and his jaw drops. He thinks that Uni was born in a shirt, since he is so lucky. Bone Fight growls, its mouth glows purple. The bodies of skeletal soldiers are lying around, stricken with thorns. Wu Yu looks at the dragon. His fallen soldiers are lying between them. Wu Yu clutches a sword and shield in his hands and thinks that his team has just started the fight. He doesn't have many soldiers, and most of them have already died. Out loud, Wu Yu asks Uni not to be afraid, because he came to train. Therefore, let Uni defend himself, and he will deal with the dragon. After these words, Wu Yu rushes into the attack, leaving a shocked Uni behind. The boy clenches his fists, thinking that the bony uncle is protecting Uni. The boy knows that even though his uncle is ugly, everyone who wants to protect Uni is good. Wu Yu hits the dragon in the chest with a sword. Each blow takes away 1 health unit from the dragon, but such blows do not take away many units of life at all. Uni, watching all this, realizes that Wu Yu is in danger. He doesn't know what to do. Here Junie squeezes the hilt of his sword and says that his dad said that boys should be brave and not retreat. He can help too. Junie, clutching the sword, begins to move around the field, dotted with spikes and skeletal bodies, hiding behind rocks. Uni watches from behind the stone as Wu Yu jumps around the dragon and hits him with a sword. He reached the front in integrity and safety. Wu Yu shuts himself off from being hit by the dragon's paw with a shield and says that with his many years of gaming experience, the only way to defeat someone who can't control himself is to shed some blood. At the same time, Uni, with a cry, strikes the dragon with a sword on the bone. This is a triple blow that takes 666 health units from the dragon. The dragon screams in pain. Wu Yu is shocked by what happened and what Yuni is doing in the place of the battle. The dragon turns furiously to the boy, who is standing near his tail with his sword raised. The dragon's mouth clicks close to the boy's face without reaching him. Juni opens her mouth in horror. The dragon sniffs at the boy, who is sweating profusely from fear. He hits the dragon's muzzle with a scream. This is a triple blow again, which takes away 666 health units from the dragon. The dragon covers his head with his paws and freezes. Wu Yu's jaw drops again from shock. Juni looks at the opponent and squeezing his fist says that Juni is not afraid. Yuni beats the dragon, taking away 666 health units from him 4 times, and 2 times 233 units. Wu Yu looks at all this in silence. Juni is chopping off a piece of the dragon's tail, raising his hands and shouting that Juni is brave. The dragon runs away, leaving part of the tail. Juni runs after him. The dragon reaches the cliff and breaks down. The dragon falls down, opening its leaky wings. Juni remains standing on the edge of the cliff with a sword. Wu Yu looks at all this with his mouth open and says that love and courage inspired him. His level has risen to level 7. Juni points towards the cliff and asks if the dragon is dead. Wu Yu thinks that fortunately the opponent could not fight, and Yuni attacked hard. Yuni said he was brave, like those brave heroes in adventure games and anime. Or is it something like a buff in the game? Wu Yu thinks that he is a monster and Yuni can kill him. Wu Yu says he said it all, pointing his finger at Yuni. There is a cold determination in his gaze. Yuni is upset and opens his mouth in shock. He asks if the bony uncle is really abandoning Yuni. There are tears in the boy's eyes. He asks the bony uncle not to leave Yuni. He will behave well. Juni can help him fight the bad guys. Wu Yu finds it all very cute. He coughs, thinking. Wu Yu thinks that this imp is dangerous, but if he uses the characteristics of the protagonist's aura correctly, Wu Yu thinks about what opportunities it will give him then. He laughs, while Juni looks at him with incomprehension. After a while, Wu Yu rides a bone horse along the road in the forest. Yuni walks next to him. Wu Yu tells the boy that it's fate that he met him. After all, he promised to take him home and will keep his word. And Wu Yu thinks to himself that the boy is so easy to deceive, since he bought into all this. On the stone pedestal is written City of the Dead, and on top is a skull. Wu Yu stands and studies the rules of the Public Security Administration of the City of the Dead. At this time, Juni is sitting and poking a spider on a pedestal with a stick. Wu Yu is studying the rule that it is forbidden to use weapons or combat skills in non-combat zones. It is forbidden to walk zombie dogs without a leash. It is forbidden to defecate in public. Racial discrimination is prohibited, except for heroes. Yuni does not understand what discrimination means and asks Wu Yu about it, clenching his fists. The same one does not understand how to explain the meaning of this word to the boy. Suddenly, a green monster runs behind them, and they also hear the sound of his running. They turn around. Juni asks if it's a dog. The creature looks like a zombie dog. The dog turns its muzzle towards them. A bone is clamped in its mouth. Here the dog is fascinated by what he saw and the bone falls out of her mouth. She rushes forward with a cry of woof. Juni opens his hands and prepares to catch the animal. Wu Yu is shocked. The dog runs past the boy and grabs Wu Yu's leg, which makes him surprised. He shouts to the whole neighborhood that this is a dog without a leash and whether its owners have a conscience. Wu Yu stands under the sign and looks at the city in front of him. A zombie dog is still clinging to his leg. Juni is standing next to him. Wu Yu notices that the City of the Dead looks ruined and poor. In front of Yu and Yuni are destroyed houses and dilapidated streets, along which zombies barely walk. Wu Yu and Yuni are discouraged by what they have seen. Wu Yu calls Yuni to go to the Tavern of the Living Dead and get some information. They pass through the crooked doors of the tavern, inside the ruin. Some of the tables are overturned. Empty bottles and remnants of dishes are lying on some. A skeleton minotaur sleeps behind the bar, which Wu Yu passes by. There is a mirror on the counter that lights up, depicting some kind of advertisement. Wu Yu is amazed that he sees TV ads in the mirror. There is such a thing in the world of the labyrinth. Wu Yu takes a mirror and begins to examine it from all sides, asking if it is a magical object. He asks the cabin boy if he has seen the advertisement. Yuni says that his dad has the same one, but the size of a palm. Every day his dad lies on the couch and watches his sister dance. Wu Yu is amazed that people in this world also watch videos. The video in the mirror ends and Wu Yu ruefully asks that this is the end. The mirror broke. Then an advertisement turns on in the mirror that the King of Magic reminds that it's time to take a break. You need to sleep well and only then will you have the strength to strengthen the gate. Wu Yu is shocked by such an advertisement. He realizes that he has seen this King of Magic somewhere. Wu Yu remembers playing computer games as a human. He saw this king of magic in his monitor. Wu Yu wonders if there is some kind of relationship between this world and the game, otherwise how could he then be transported? This king of magic might know something. Wu Yu loudly asks the bartender where he can find this guy, pointing to the image of the king of magic in the mirror. The bartender thinks about pouring a cocktail from a shaker into a glass and replies that you can contact the expert hotline of the king's palace temple. He says these words with long pauses. This pronunciation angers Wu Yu. The Minotaur ends his words by saying that the king is the Demon King. Wu Yu is standing in front of a handheld phone with a picture of a Minotaur. He scratches the back of his head and realizes that there is also a magic object in front of him. Wu Yu tries to dial the number, but it's hard for him to do it because of his short stature. Wu Yu realizes that if he's not 3 meters tall, he doesn't even deserve to make a phone call. The Minotaur's eyes on the phone light up red. Wu Yu speaks into a huge microphone hello. He is answered hello, then there is a cough and again hello. The subscriber is busy. He can leave his message after the beep. A beep sounds. Wu Yu shouts angrily about what it is. They answered him. The character who answered the phone, lying on the couch, tells the girl sitting next to Bella that it's her turn now. Notification panels hang in the air in front of them. The guy throws aside the microphone, from which comes Wu Yu's cry about whether he is being listened to at all. Wu Yu, who is standing and holding the microphone, is told, asking for forgiveness, that the caller he is calling is busy. He is asked to please try later. Wu Yu angrily throws back the microphone, saying what to do with it. The microphone flies away. The zombie dog jumps away from Wu Yu in horror. The action is transferred to the palace of the Demon King. The girl informs the lying guy, whom Wu Yu called, addressing him as His Majesty, that his subject has been waiting for him for a long time. He replies that okay, he is more interested in how to walk. A creature in a cloak, with a book and a staff in his hands, says, addressing His Majesty the Demon King, that based on the forecast, a hero will come to this world. The world of the labyrinth will face another invasion. The fortune teller asks the Demon King to prepare carefully. The Demon King is happy that Bella has lost again. He's playing some kind of game on the blue panel in front of him. The fortune teller is angry at such inattention, and he asks if the king is listening to him. The same one laughs and tells Bella that he won again. Then he jumps up and furiously clenching his fists asks the predictor again about who will come, which hero. Bella is in shock. The predictor says that the hero will appear to go against the maze world. The Demon King is scared, wondering what to do. A hero again. They killed him 999 times, and there is no end to these coming heroes. He doesn't want to die again. The Demon King coughs and says that this time, since the coming of the hero was predicted in advance, the world of the labyrinth will not suffer. He commands that an urgent meeting of the labyrinth's top leadership be immediately announced and that the demon generals be assembled to discuss countermeasures. The fortune teller asks the Demon King to remain calm, and he goes towards the fiery portal, on both sides of which there are guards. When he leaves, the Demon King rushes to Bella with tears and asks her to help him. He does not want to die anymore. She answers him that it is the fate of the Demon King to be attacked by a hero. The Demon King asks her not to say that. Whole generations of heroes attacked him. He was killed 999 times. She must understand his feelings. He remembers the smiling heroes with swords and asks Bella if she knows how terribly they tortured him. They burned, killed, robbed, and did all kinds of evil. The heroes are greedy and immoral. The hero is a man sitting surrounded by chests of riches and rejoicing in the treasures. Heroes build their happiness on someone else's grief. The hero and the girl get married, and mountains of gold and defeated demons are lying in the background. The heroes brought endless pain and suffering to the world of the labyrinth. Heroes are the greatest evil. Wu Yu is standing. The dog is still clinging to his boot. Junie sighs heavily. Wu Yu is standing near the bar. Behind his back, the Minotaur bartender made 2 cocktails. Uni sits next to him on a chair and looks at Wu Yu, who thinks that this world is similar to the RPG game Labyrinth of the Demon World, which he played before the transfer, except for the rules. The only thing that looks like is the big boss. Wu Yu's transfer to this world must have something to do with the Demon King. Maybe he can bring Wu Yu home. Wu Yu abruptly turns to the Minotaur bartender and loudly asks how he can see the devil. This makes Junie jump up in fright. Minotaur shows a magazine with a dark-haired girl on the cover, which says the Kingdom of the Abyss of the Living Dead. Hela is a glamorous, mysterious queen. Wu Yu is discouraged. He notices that the Minotaur bartender is confused. An hour later, the Minotaur bartender dreams of Hela, thinking that it is very difficult to talk to her. He could barely resist drawing his sword and cutting her in half. Junie is sitting and eating fried meat, and Wu Yu is studying a magazine. The dog is still clinging to his leg with its teeth. Wu Yu snatches a cocktail glass from the counter. He drinks the whole cocktail in one gulp. The glass falls and breaks. The remains of the drink are poured out. Wu Yu sits down on the floor. A cocktail flows out of his mouth. He shivers and puts his hands to his stomach. His status changes to poisoned, and he loses 233 health units. Sitting on the floor, he stretches out his hand to Uni and asks him for help. Analyzing the available information about this world that he received from the owner of the tavern, Wu Yu came to the conclusion that this place is called the Labyrinth of the Demon World. This is a world ruled by the Demon King Black Hai Yy and Ayatan Wenwei Wuvan Mubu Odas and 10 magical generals. Wu Yu finds the name of the Demon King very long and strange. The Demon King Odas and 3 generals live in the Demon Palace on the top floor. Wu Yu builds a hierarchical ladder of leadership of the Labyrinth of the Demon World. In it, in addition to the king and 3 generals, the other generals share 7 floors of an independent world. In addition to the Demon Palace, there is an industrial capital, the Magic House of Fia, a legendary ring, a psychedelic city, a city of terrible entertainment, and the lowest level, the Kingdom of the Living Dead of the Abyss. It is on it that you and Uni have. The boss running this world is the Grim Reaper Hela, who can help him get right to the Demon King's palace and meet him. Wu Yu imagines Hela, a dark-haired girl with red burning eyes. Wu Yu walks through the dark streets of the city and thinks that this Grim Reaper Hela is a level boss. It would be difficult to deal with her if there were any disagreements. Juni pats the zombie dog on the head. Wu Yu looks at how Uni hugs the dog and thinks that in order not to take risks in the battle with Hela, he better uses the aura of the hero to increase his strength first. Then Wu Yu notices the entrance to the equipment store. He decides that this is a good chance to buy. At the same time, in the palace of the Demon King, the Demon King Odas is lying on the bed, surrounded by books and crying, saying how stupid he is. A door opens to his chambers and someone addresses His Majesty. The seer informs him that the demonic generals have arrived. It's time to go to the negotiation hall. There are generals behind him. On the bed are several books about the Demon King with the titles The Demon King in a Relationship, Charming Love, The Legend of the Harem of the Demon King, The Hero Fell in Love with a Great Demon. The Demon King is lying on the bed and reading one of the books. The seer repeatedly addresses him. A toy bear with a ring on its head is running somewhere, spreading its paws, followed by a girl with tails. She shouts to the bear, Pippi, not to run away and wait for her. This is a girl with blonde hair and wings on her back. The bear jumps on the bed right on the Demon King lying there. The girl runs up to the bed. The toy bear sits right on the Demon King Odas, who wipes his bloody nose with a handkerchief. A girl with a guilty look is sitting on the bed next to her. The Demon King Odas says he's fine. If everyone is here, then it's worth going to the meeting room. After a while, all the generals of the Labyrinth of the Demon World gather at a long table in the negotiation hall. Odas leans his hands on the table and leaning his head against them tells the general that most likely they have heard that a new generation of heroes has appeared. They listen to him attentively. Odas continues, saying that they are all here to discuss what to do with the heroes. He hopes that this time they will all unite and think together. Here one of the generals interrupts the king and says that the most important thing is to allocate funds for each of the floors, especially for his. The premises have not been repaired for years. Adventurers always easily pass his floor. This is a baby sitting on the shoulder of a gorilla. The magical Bobby Reba sitting on the shoulder of the cruel King Kong Delulu. Magic Bobby Reba says everyone should give them some resources for low levels. After all, they are all compatriots of the labyrinth. If they have money, they can give it. If not, then let them give people. For example, send more curly fairies to lure the heroes. Magic Bobby Reba raises his hand and asks Hela that he is right, that they should fight together. The Grim Reaper Hela, sitting opposite them, sternly folding her arms on her chest, asks to move away from her. Magic Bobby Reba and King Kong Delulu huddle together in fright from such a reaction. The Demon King Odas asks baby Hela to calm down and not get angry. Hela grins at his request. The other girl general sees that something is wrong with the Demon King. He laid his head on his hands in sorrow. Magic Bobby Reba shouts to one of the generals, calling him an old crocodile, that he has a lot of oil and water in his spine. This time he must answer for everything. The crocodile opens the lighter, lights the fire and closes it. An important crocodile, Cage, lit a cigar and pointed it at the Magic Bobby Rib said that his factory is not profitable now. But even if he had money, he wouldn't give it to them, greedy guys. Magic Bobby Reba jumps from the shoulder of King Kong Delulu to the table, throwing a pacifier, and shouts to Cage how dare he say that he has no money. How then he makes so many materials and equipment every day. He's preparing an uprising. A wooden staff knocks on the floor. This is the seer, the high priest of Shenzhen Sao, who says that it is not worth making noise. We need to give everyone an opportunity to talk. The girl general shakes Oda's, asking if his majesty is all right. All this is being watched by the demon general of purgatory, on Tobias, sitting at the table. He laughs and says that he has never relied on others. It's even funny. He makes a suggestion why his majesty should not get rid of the first floors of the labyrinth. Magic Bobby Reba and King Kong Delulu are amazed by such a proposal. A blonde with wings is swinging on a large golden candelabra, who laughs and asks to be allowed to be responsible for preventing these daredevils. She jumps down right on the chair at the table and apologizes for being late. She needed time to collect Pippi. This is a free Fia demon. King Kong Delulu shrinks in horror, screaming for this filth to be removed from him. He looks at the Pippi bear toy on the table in front of him. Magic Bobby Reba, pointing at Pippi, says that Odo probably messes up every day. Pippi jumps up and, spreading his arms to the sides, shows his tongue to Dulol. King Kong's eyes fill with anger. His eyes roll up and he falls senseless head on the table. Magic Bobby Reba shouts that Dululu was so scared that he lost consciousness. He turns to Fia and asks her to take Pippi back. She shows him her tongue, making a face, and says that she is already running and falling to do it. Here, from the mirror standing on the table, a voice is heard greeting everyone, and then the question is heard if the speaker is heard. Delulu has already regained consciousness and, along with the others, pays attention to the mirror. From there, the words check the connection sound. A blue whirlpool is depicted in the glass. Then, an image of a girl with pink hair sitting at a table appears. This is a living mirror of the moon. Luna addresses the generals, asking if they can hear her and telling them welcome to the live broadcast of the moon. The high priest of Shenzhen Sal is surprised that this is a new magic mirror made by the moon. Is the technology of signal transmission so advanced? Luna says that they got into trouble again and she doesn't think that everyone had time to forget the past painful experience. For the sake of all the inhabitants of the labyrinth, shouldn't they unite and not fixate on their own benefit? What is there to argue about in such a situation at all? Fia, eating a cake, says that the moon looks somehow different today. Luna says that now they must definitely. The signal is interrupted and interference is found on the image. The connection is cut off. From the mirror comes the words that there is not enough magic. Fia says something is wrong. Somewhere else, Luna is sitting at a table with a pile of food on the table around her. She is eating chips in a bathrobe and says into the microphone that, alas, the mirror has failed again. Then something catches her attention. She realizes that the mirror has started working again and the automatic visualization function has flown off and shown her real one. Let the generals not look where the screen is. Everyone sitting at the table sees the real moon in the mirror, sitting in a bathrobe and eating chips. Magic Bobby Reba, putting his hands to the mirror, says that Miss Luna looks so cute in this pajamas. The moon puts her hands to the mirror to block her view. Then the Magic Bobby Reba grabs his head with a scream. His bottle flies off to the side. Crocodile Cage holds a pistol in his hands, from the barrel of which smoke is coming. On Tobias slams his fist on the table and asks Cage what he is doing. They are in the Parliament Hall. Magic Bobby Reba points his finger at Cage and asks what he is doing. If it wasn't for his body, he would have twisted the crocodile into a meatloaf long ago. Dujalulu puts his hands to his head and says he's scared. The high priest of Shenzhen Sal demands everyone to be silent. The demon king Otis is silent, with his head in his hands, and suddenly hits the table with his palm. He stands up and says quite harshly. All the generals fall silent and turn their attention to the king. Otis walks away from the table and says that he has a stomach ache. He opens the door and says that he will go first, and the generals here will discuss everything themselves, and leaves the room. Crocodile Cage goes and says that there is no use in these meetings. Fia tells Pippi that they need to go and take a bath when they get back. Magic Bobby Reba says that nothing worked out and turns to someone in the coffin named Wolf, asking him to get up since the meeting is over. The coffin lid opens and a hand is shown. It's a blonde guy with dog ears who stretches and says he slept so well. Wolf the werewolf jumps out of the coffin so that the lid falls to the floor and then runs and says that he is now full of strength, and then laughs. Magic Bobby Reba looks after him and asks what's wrong with this guy. Not only did Wolf steal someone else's coffin, he also broke it. In the palace of the Demon King, Otis opens the door to the chambers with his feet. He falls to his knees and ruefully declares to Bella that his heart is broken. The generals don't accept him as the Demon King. It's over. Bella hugs his hand. The high priest of Shenzhen Sal and On Tobias are standing next to him. Otis leans against Bulia and says that he has lost his dignity. She comforts him, asking him not to be afraid. He is the master of the labyrinth, and everyone living in it obeys his orders. Otis clenches her fist, full of determination, and says that her words are true. He is the king of this world. He can't afford to slack off. He tells Bella that he wants to issue an order to hire people from all corners of the maze. Generals, staff officers, and chiefs of the Banner garrison, regardless of race, can become his subordinates and help him in the fight against the brave. At the same time, in the western sector of the Dead City, a bald man is sitting on a bench with an axe next to him. He holds a gramophone in his hands and shouts recycling. Old weapons, magic items, minerals. A little ghost flies and asks for help sooner. He was kicked by a thug with a bat. Other robbers are scattered along the alley, in which a zombie lies with a pierced head. The robber girl stands with one foot on an elderly zombie and throws a knife into the air. Next to an elderly zombie sits the same zombie child who holds his hand, crying and saying "Grandpa." The bald man looks at the gramophone and says that this thing is really loud. Unexpectedly, he found something worthwhile in this dump. He throws the gramophone into the girl's hands. She catches it. A bald man turns to an elderly zombie, saying that, as he said, if he has something worthwhile, then it's worth giving it immediately. He lifts the old man off the ground by his clothes and pulls him towards himself. Sweat is pouring down from the zombies. The old man asks the bald man to have mercy. He really has nothing of value left. In response to these words, he angrily throws the zombie away. He falls to the ground. His grandson reaches out to him in horror. The bald man says that he wanders around this small ruined town here, but he didn't really find anything good. One of the robbers rips off the wanted flyers from the bulletin board. He says they posted a warrant for their arrest even in this seedy corner. Sooner or later, they will deal with this piece of shit. The man and the girl look at the board. In the hands of the girl, the gramophone continues to repeat the words recycling. Old weapons, magical items. The robber continues to rip off the leaflets. The thugs leave the alley, and their leader, a bald man, says that from now on they will have the last word in the Dead City. Behind them, an old zombie is lying on the ground, not moving. The boy is crying, clinging to the body of his grandfather. The action is transferred to the anti-war village, a place in the desert surrounded by stones painted with red symbols. The monster looks like a huge porcupine, brings an axe to strike. Uni is standing in front of him, clutching a small sword in his hands. Uni turns around and runs away, with tears in his eyes, calling his uncle to save him. Wu Yu stands behind a rock behind the porcupine monster and watches the 3 golden spikes on the creature's back. Wu Yu says he has a chance. He jumps swiftly with his arms outstretched towards the golden spike. Yu has a golden spike. The porcupine monster roars in pain, tears springing from his eyes. Porcupine turns around. Junie, standing in front of him, does not understand what is happening. Wu Yu runs, clutching a golden spike under his arm, and says that the epic porcupine's attack is a success. Where is the applause for him? Wu Yu and Uni run away. The porcupine monster runs after them with an axe in his hands. Wu Yu and Uni are running. A zombie dog is running next to them. Wu Yu raises a golden spike over his head. The porcupine hits the ground with an axe, causing stones to fly to the sides. Uni asks Wu Yu if everything is really okay, because his dad said that stealing is not good. Wu Yu calls Yunip a stupid child and says that this can hardly be called stealing. The porcupine has so many thorns, he won't even notice that one of them is missing. The porcupine approaches them, raising his axe to strike. Junie turns around and says that judging by the porcupine's appearance, he doesn't really want to lend them a thorn. The monster's eyes light up red and he forcefully hits the ground with an axe, creating an explosion. Wu Yu, Uni and the dog fly up in the air. Wu Yu turns around in fright and tells Uni to run. While fleeing, Wu Yu is imprinted into a wooden pointer. It hurts him. Uni, with a dog in his hands, slows down, seeing that his friend has hit. He asks Wu Yu if he is okay. The man is dizzy from the blow. He does not understand what is happening. Wu Yu looks up and sees that it is a sign with the inscription anti-war area. He is glad, since this is not a combat area. He looks at the porcupine running at them and tells Junie to run to him as soon as possible. Wu Yu stands near the sign and looks at the porcupine, which breaks right next to the sign. Wu Yu smiles as he watches the creature growl with impotence. Wu Yu thinks this is a great outcome. He was right about the mechanism of action of this area. The monster does not dare to approach him. Wu Yu, opening his mouth in fear, notices how Uni moved away from the sign towards the monster and leaned his sword against its mouth. The beast growls. A dog sitting on Junie's head emits gases into the mouth of a porcupine. He stands up on his hind legs in a rage and raises the axe. The creature smashes the anti-war area sign in half, causing Wu Yu, Uni and the dog to scream in horror. There is also a signal on the speakerphone that fighting is prohibited in this area. Wu Yu and Uni run away, and the monster jumps on them, raising an axe to strike. Wu Yu shouts that it looks like the porcupine has finally lost his temper. There are outbreaks all over the city. Purple lightning bolts burst out of the loudspeakers, which hit the porcupine. He runs in terror while lightning shoots him in the back. Wu Yu rejoices, shouting that he told the monster that this is after all an anti-war zone. And then why did he attack them? Uni looks at Wu Yu in delight and, addressing him, Uncle says that he is amazing. It turns out that this was his plan. Wu Yu is embarrassed by such praise. He says that yes, that was his plan, but it's nothing and it's not worth talking about. Lightning continues to sting the porcupine. Wu Yu looks at it and laughs. He tells the boy that he must remember that you cannot recklessly get into a fight. You need to learn the tactics of fighting. Uni is surprised by the word tactician and says that Wu Yu knows so many words. He had never heard of that word. He replies that of course this is his experience, accumulated over a lifetime. Why don't Uni become his disciple? He will teach you how to become a real brave man. He jumps on the spot with delight and agrees. Wu Yu rejoices at this, thinking that such a development of events is only to his advantage. The fight against monsters in the future will fall on the shoulders of Uni, his new student. Wu Yu and Uni come to the item store in the anti-war zone. This is a huge room where there are tables with various weapons lying on them. Wu Yu and Uni are greeted by a sales girl who tells them welcome. She put down the weapon, which Wu Yu liked last time, and asks if he is still interested in it. Wu Yu puts a golden porcupine monster needle on the table and asks the girl to take a look, asking if it's a good enough thing to make an exchange. The needle begins to glow. Its characteristic is 1260 GL. The balance is 250 GL. Wu Yu and Uni thank for the visit and say that their item was exchanged for a sharp sword of Yarick. Wu Yu is delighted. Uni and the dog also open their mouths in delight at the sight of the sword. They look admiringly at the sword lying in front of them. Wu Yu picks up the sword, looking at the weapon with fascination, and says that it is really good. Here the bones on Yu's hands crack and break. Uni is horrified to see how the bones of Yu's hands below the elbow fall together with the sword to the floor and asks if everything is alright with that. The sword glows, and Yu's hands are still clutching it. Wu Yu's hands in new gloves grip the hilt of the sword. Wu Yu waves the sword, saying that it is too heavy. Fortunately, he sold the materials for the adventurer's equipment that he had collected earlier. And I bought a pair of gloves that increase strength. Uni, looking at how Wu Yu is practicing, enthusiastically claps his hands, saying that he owns the art of the sword. He answers with a smile, of course, he owns this art. The girl behind the counter tells Wu Yu that if he needs something in the future, he can come at any time. Wu Yu remembers all the objects that came across to him, a mirror, a phone, loudspeakers, a sword, and thinks that it is so strange that there are so many high-level rare magical props and equipment in this poor dilapidated city. Wu Yu returns to the counter and, leaning back, asks the girl what he has been wanting to know for a long time about what has been bothering him for quite a long time. Why their city looks like it is about to collapse. The girl pulls out a magic ball from behind the counter and says that in fact, the city was once a famous center of trade in these places. Junie looks at the ball with interest. The girl continues, saying that adventurer people dropped in here to rest or cross somewhere. The girl continues to look for something behind the counter, laying out various items in front of Wu Yu and Uni. She says that the big bosses from the labyrinth annually allocated large sums of money for construction. And he continues that at least it used to be so. She hands Wu Yu a magazine with Welcome to the Dead City written on the cover, published in May 999. Wu Yu opens a magazine and sees an image of a beautiful blooming city. He is amazed at how beautiful it used to be. The girl says that unfortunately, she does not know when the above-mentioned cut funding. In addition, the staff was constantly sent for some checks, and as a result there was no one to manage this place. Junie looks admiringly at the goods in front of him. The girl says that if there is no order, then chaos is born. Some high-ranking guys took the opportunity to take more money to themselves and settle in the very center of the city. A ghost is shown surrounded by luxury and wealth, and a zombie in torn clothes collecting scraps. As a result, the gap between rich and poor inside and outside the city became larger and larger. There are also those who go to the war zone to get a little power. But the worst of all are adventurers who harass the locals when they find out that there are no main ones here. Simply put, the worst people are robbers. The girl, imagining all this, angrily beats her fists on the table and says that as soon as people found out that the punishment system in some parts of the city was outdated and no longer usable, They began to look for loopholes. Wu Yu is amazed by this reaction. The girl turns away from him, wiping her tears, crying and saying that they were the center of trade. She imagines combat props, magical household appliances, the famous beer of the underworld. All this was in the city, and now they have turned into a small business that barely makes ends meet. The girl wipes her tears with a piece of Yuni's cloak. She apologizes to her customers, saying that she was overexcited. Wu Yu thinks about the fact that they are here in this miserable place, in normal operation. Why do the inhabitants of the upper labyrinth ignore this? Then Yu comes up with an idea. He turns to the girl, asking that those guys she mentioned don't have their own collection of treasures, unless they can be found here. The girl is surprised by his question. Day 1. Night. Central residential area. There are shouts and exclamations of my treasure. A zombie with a monocle is sitting on the roof of one of the houses and looking into the darkness says that his target may not try to escape. He will overtake her. Then something catches his attention and he exclaims in surprise that he sees a lot of creatures flying through the air with bags on their backs. He doesn't understand who it is. It's Wu Yu, and the creatures behind him are flying with the looted treasures. Wu Yu turns around and says he got rid of it. Wu Yu lovingly strokes his helmet and says that this armor can't control higher level monsters, but it's really useful when it comes to manpower. Day 2. Night. Battle Grove. Creatures with a Taoist talisman on their face stretch out their hands and growl, saying that this talisman is a relic inherited from his ancestors. This is a sign of getting rid of the shackles. He will never give it up. Wu Yu sits astride a skeleton horse and clutching a sword in his hand tells the creature that either he will save the relic or life. The choice is his. Wu Yu chases the monster, which runs straight towards Yuni, who is waiting for him with a sword. Yuni holds a gun in front of him and says he will never back down in the name of justice. Day 3. Night. Residential area in the city center. Someone exclaims money and clay miniatures from the limited series. Wu Yu stands near the treasure chest and gives the bag of gold to the ghost, behind which another one is waiting in line. On the ground next to the zombie, clutching a bag in his hands, crying with happiness, Yuni distributes money to others with a smile. Wu Yu thinks that he will exchange some of the extracted treasures for equipment, and the remaining gold coins can be distributed to low-level monsters. He will rob the rich and help the poor. Two ghost women richly dressed in a nice neighborhood discuss that a raider has recently appeared in their neighborhood. They say it's so fast that people can't see it. The only thing they know is that under the light of a street lamp, the raider shines with gold. The woman says she is afraid of his gaze. Wu Yu is clutching some parchment in his hands, holding a sword and a sparkling golden shield. He is smiling. His hands are covered with gold jewelry. Wu Yu is standing behind the wall and carefully studying the newspaper. This is the City Express. The page depicts the Demon King Oda's. The newspaper published an article about the robber. Wu Yu is happy that he made the headline today. He had almost collected all the rare treasures and materials. Wu Yu wonders which of the hard-to-reach items from the list he should look for next. Then they notice a procession of small skeletons in black raincoats and with backpacks. He watches them cross the road and remembers that somewhere it was said about fabric with the breath of death. He understands that the skeletons are wearing just such a fabric. He was damn lucky. Wu Yu leans over to the skeletons with a smile and asks them if they can do Uncle a favor. They are trembling with fear. They huddle together and one of them tells the others that his mom said that if a stranger tries to talk to him, he may have bad intentions. Therefore, the children begin to scream in horror. They turn around and run screaming, run away. From the backpack of one of the skeletons, a book flies out onto the road, a crash course of the god of death. Wu Yu shouts after them that there is no need to run away. There is no need to be afraid of him. He will give them a yummy. But the children are already quickly running away. A pond in which blooming water lilies swim. Black swans of death are swimming in the pond. One of the swans, leaning his head against the other, calls him his favorite. He replies to his treasure that she is so beautiful today. Apart from her, he doesn't care about anything. Swans lovingly touch their foreheads, while on land behind them, Wu Yu catches up with small skeletons running away from him first in one direction, then in the opposite direction. This is starting to annoy the swans. The swan girl turns her head in the direction of the running, to which another swan asks her not to move. They won't interfere with it. She should pretend that she doesn't notice anything. Wu Yu runs down the hill after the little skeletons, which run away from him straight to the swans in the pond. It makes them angry. Skeletons begin to rush between the swans, causing them to be shocked. Wu Yu looks at the skeletons jumping on the water lilies and says that he is good. Wu Yu says he will see how good the kids are at swimming and dives into the water. He gets stuck between the swans. Wu Yu is surprised by what happened and that the swans are very soft. He thought these swans were a statue. One of the swans offers to whisper to the other to speed up Wu Yu a little, and they unclench, which makes him fly forward rapidly. One of the swans calms himself aloud, asking him to keep himself in hand. Then, somewhere in the western district of the city, Wu Yu is still chasing the skeleton children, who run straight to the company of robbers who attacked the residents of the city of the dead earlier. One of the children with tears shouts a request to people to help. Wu Yu chases them, asking them not to run away. One of the robbers rejoices that the skeletons came here of their own free will. Another asks him to look at the monster behind, which has so many treasures. Wu Yu stops in front of people and asks who they are and what they need. They look at him and shake their weapons, grinning. A girl with daggers in her hands jumps into the air and says that they were so lucky to meet a real goldfish. Her companions with weapons also jump to attack. In the hands of one bat, the other has a flail. Wu Yu is shocked. He grins, pulling out his sword, and saying that these guys really decided to rob him. He jumps to the side, avoiding the blow of the guy with the bat, and immediately raises his sword for a counterattack. Wu Yu says it's his turn now. He forcefully strikes the attacker in the face with his sword, from which he flies to the ground with a broken nose. Wu Yu asks this is all his opponent is capable of. The other attackers freeze in shock. One of them wonders what's the matter. Unless skeletal monsters are not low-level monsters. The girl creates a fire in front of her using the fireball spell. A pillar of fire flies into Wu Yu. He raises the sword using increased fire resistance. Wu Yu takes the impact of the fire on his shield, which easily absorbs the flames. Yu's eyes light up red and he says it's a bunch of low-level attackers. They pissed him off. Wu Yu's eyes light up red. Behind him lies a defeated robber. He tells his attackers that he will teach them a little lesson. Wu Yu attacks them. One of the robbers shouts that they are finished. The man is unwinding the flail, preparing to meet the attack. One of the bracelets on Yu's hands begins to glow. His shield meets the blow of the brush and withstands it. Wu Yu makes a swing of the sword and the opponent flies away. He crashes into a girl in flight. They both fall to the ground and lose consciousness. The last of the robbers is trying to bring his friend to his senses. He understands that if he doesn't want to get hurt, he has to find a way out. Wu Yu approaches him, raising his sword to strike and asks if he has decided to leave. The robber squeezes the bat, thinking that if he blocks Wu Yu's attack, he will have a chance to escape. A thug blocks a sword strike with a bat. He shouts, realizing how heavy Yu's sword is. Wu Yu kicks the robber aside, knocking out his teeth. Wu Yu recalls how he was humiliated by the heroes and how he ran away from them. He thinks life is full of ups and downs. Unless after all he has experienced, he can now allow others to mock him. Wu Yu calls the bald male leader of the robbers to come to him. The same one is shocked to see his people lying unconscious on the street. The man pulls out an axe from behind his back and says that this is an outrage. His whole team. He pulls out an axe, from which lightning begins to emanate. The man does not understand how his entire team could have fallen because of a single monster. The man's eyes light up with anger. He rushes to attack. Wu Yu easily walks away from her, shocking the opponent, and says that what a simple attack. Wu Yu slips, grazing the brush with his foot, and falls on his back. The man shouts to the team members who have come to their senses, so that they quickly use this opportunity to pile on Wu Yu. One of them is hitting with a bat. Wu Yu is spinning on the ground. His head starts to spin. The girl throws daggers at him, which stick into the ground between Yu's legs. He screams in shock. He starts to run away. Daggers are flying at his back. Wu Yu says that the robbers simply have a numerical advantage. Let them just wait. One of the thugs raises a crossbow. Wu Yu runs away from them, shouting to them that they have angered him and he will deal with them. Wu Yu runs into an apartment building while running away. He abruptly opens the door and calls Junie. He wakes up rubbing his eyes. The dog sleeps next to him in bed. Wu Yu tells Junie to wake up soon. He is needed for an important matter. Junie looks in shock as Wu Yu grabs his arm and pulls him out of bed. Wu Yu runs and drags Junie along the street, and says that they need to deal with someone. It's time for Junie to get involved in business. Futons of the Western District. Robbers are sitting around a pile of looted treasures. The girl offers her partner to share money. Here one points to the side with his finger and asks his comrades to look. Wu Yu is standing there. Junie is next to him, and behind him is a crowd of monsters and skeletons. Wu Yu points his hand at the robbers, giving the command forward, and the low-level creatures rush to attack. The robbers are screaming in shock, not understanding where the monsters came from and whether Wu Yu is their boss. Wu Yu looks at how the robbers are beaten at his command. Junie points at the fight with his finger and asks Wu Yu who these thugs are. Are they bad people? Wu Yu replies that he will teach the boy a little lesson today. You can't be too kind, there are bad people. Wu Yu rushes to the attack. The leader of the robbers fights off the creatures, saying that their level may not be high, but it's not so easy to cope with them. One of the thugs says they can't win, they need to find a way to get out of here. The guy with the bat points to Uni and says they can handle that little one. Go ahead. He approaches Juni laughing. Tears froze in the boy's eyes. He asks what the man is doing. Yu looks at this and says that the robber himself chose to die. There is nothing to be done. Uni tells the thug not to approach. He is bad and attacks the attacker using super crit, which takes 999 units of life. The robbers are sitting, beaten and with their hands tied. Monsters are standing around them. Yu is sitting surrounded by his army. Uni is standing next to him. Yu asks the robbers who they are and why they came here. The leader shouts at Yu that he is a fucking monster. They won't tell him anything. Yu replies that it was rather rude, but he was ready for it. He asks Darling to bring the medicine. He carries a glass with a pink cocktail on a tray. One of the robbers, seeing Darling, asks if they have run out of willing since they are recruiting small fry, hinting at the size of the Darling. After these words, it increases dramatically in size. He has muscular arms. He squeezes the robber's head and forcefully pours liquid into his mouth. From the drink, he falls senseless to the ground, losing consciousness. His partners are terrified. Darling, having become small again, runs away smiling. Yu points to the lying robber and demands to speak. The girl says that she is engaged in recruitment. Her name is Kin Mao. One of the men introduces himself as Songshi, the other is called Bo. Yu stops them, shouting what nonsense they are talking. He wanted to know their real names, not aliases. Bo bangs his head on the ground and turning to Yu Master, asks him for mercy. They're just a group of lonely ghosts looking for a place to sleep. They don't even remember their names. Yu is surprised that robbers are not people. He replies that they really used to be a group of adventurers determined to conquer the labyrinth. He remembers how they fled at sunset. Their leader was going to become the king of adventures. However, their path turned out to be far from easy. A huge monster with tentacles throws the robbers in different directions. They went through a lot of difficulties, but they met a very strong monster who killed them. When they woke up, they found that they had turned into wandering souls who could move around the maze, but could not get out of it. So they had to wander around because other adventurers wouldn't accept them, and the local ghosts would never treat them as equals and wouldn't sell them anything. The girl says that they had nothing left but petty theft until they were noticed by the patrol of the god of death. They ran to the nearest ghost valley to ask for shelter. They said there wasn't enough malice in them and didn't accept them. Yu understands why they were here, and he felt ashamed. Juni wipes her tears with a handkerchief. Yu asks the ghosts what their plans are for the future. They don't plan to continue bullying the locals. Yu thinks that if it wasn't for a few freaks from their gang, he would have accepted them. Here everyone sees the spirit of Shiki soaring up. Everyone is in shock. Shiki rejoices and says that he has been cleansed. It's all because of Uni. His sword has a special power. They can finally be released. Yu looks at Uni and thinks that the boy really pierced the robber's soul. After all, Uni is a real brave man. His weapon probably has some sacred attributes. Yu points to the delighted robbers and asks if they also want to be cleansed. They say yes. They don't want to be chained to this place forever. They ask to be released. Yu pats Uni on the head and says that in this case they will do a good deed. Uni is shocked, realizing that he needs to cut the robbers. Yu replies that yes, it may look cruel, but in fact it is for the good. They'll appreciate it. Uni readily clutches the sword, saying that he understood his mission. The ghosts thank them. Yu laughs while Uni frees the robbers. Yu runs to the ghost treasures. They hide such good things that are probably worth a lot of money. He takes the beads and says he will accept it as a reward. Yu raises the beads to his eyes and tells Uni that they worked well, and now they should go back and rest. At night outside the city, a rider riding a glowing horse leads a group of monsters. They all glow blue. The commander orders his soldiers to search. They must find the king's lost pendant. Day 2. The sun illuminates the streets. Yu stretches, saying what a wonderful day. Uni yawns and asks what they will do today. The sound of hooves is heard on the road. Yu and Uni watch as something approaches them ahead, kicking up dust. This is the army that approached the city at night. Yu screams, not understanding where this cavalry unit came from. Soldiers knock down simple monsters, break windows in houses. Yu says that it seems these guys are upset about something. Uni takes him by the hand and points at the army, saying that they mock people and spoil public property. These are bad people. The leader of the attackers stops in front of them. His shadow falls on Yu, on whose chest the commander notices the very lost pendant of the king. He found a relic of his king.